What's up, everyone? I got tired of using a butter knife, and you go into like a peanut butter jar, and you can't use that point to take out anything, like jam, jelly, peanut butter, mayonnaise. You can't get that. It's a pain in the neck to gather. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to make one myself. And I started to, but then it wasn't long enough. See, I have this piece of aluminum. Actually, it came from here. This is, I made a fork spoon combo out of this at one time, but I'm going to use it, you know, the reason I'm using that, it's aluminum and it's not long enough for why I made this, so I'm going to have to make it a little bit longer, because when you put the knife down in the container, the handle always gets peanut butter or something on it, so I want to make it a little bit longer. And this looks like a perfect piece here. I gotta recut this down and use it. And I sanded this down, and I was thinking it's too thick, but then again, I can always file down the edge and everything. It seems fine. And I got a piece of wood that I ripped down. I had this piece of wood, I made a knife with it, and I used a circular saw and a bench vise, and I split it, and I ran it down the middle, and I turned it around, and I cut it in two. I'm going to use these for the handle, even though that's crappy looking, but we'll make the best of it. So right now I have to just cut this down, just cut a strip out of there, and let's get on to that. Now what I'm using is this angle grinder. I put it in a vise, and I'm just going to cut it, because I figure I walk out to by the time I get out to the car and get my Sawzall, my reciprocating saw, I can just have this cut, so I ain't going to walk out there. So I'm just going to work on this and cut it down to that size. Now I ground most of it through, and it's hot, so there you go. I broke it off. Yeah, it's pretty warm. I ain't going to touch that. I'm going to have to pick it up, put it down, and start sanding on it. I'm using 40 grit on an orbital sander. There's a big lip right there. I'm going to have to sand that. I'll sand it all off. But I'll just basically showing you. I'll hold it down and sand all this paint and stuff off and make it totally flat. Now I got it all sanded. Now I can draw something that will be the shape that I want. Well, I got a piece of cardboard, and this looks promising. Now I need to make this part a little bit longer, because I want it to be as long as this. So let's extend this a little bit longer. Alright, I got a piece of cardboard, and I drawn out like a template, and I wanted to make it long enough as this piece here, so I get the handle out of that jar. So let's cut this out and put it on here and trace it around and cut it out of that. Alright, I got to transfer it on there. I'm going to use the angle grinder to grind this out, because my jigsaw, I brought my jigsaw in, and I don't have any metal blades for it, so I'm going to make best with what I got and just cut it out with that. Well, I got my handle cut out, so I just have to figure out how I'm going to attach it. Well, as you can see, I drilled this out, and I put these bolts in here, and I was thinking, what can I put in there for a, like pins? And I wanted to use a soft metal, so I was thinking brass. I got to go get a brass rod, but I had these are bearings that I put on the end of the machine, on the end of the rollers, and I hit it a couple of times, and it's really soft, and I figured, oh, it's brass, that should be pretty good. I'm going to heat this up, and I burned out the plastic ring that was in there, or bushing. I'm going to heat this up, and I'm going to pound it into a rod. I'm going to try to, and then I'll replace these with that rod, and we'll see how we get with that. Oh, well, that idea ain't working. Wow, that was weakened it. Okay, I have 3 other ones. I'll try it when they're cold instead of heating them up. Well, this is the other one I had. There's the plastic bushing in there, and I can see that it's just brittle. Oh well, I learned something today. So I'll have to get a brass rod that's the same size as these holes I drilled. So there we go. Well, I went to Handyman, Ace Hardware, and I picked up these bolts. They're brass. They're for the toilet tanks and stuff, and mount them to the floor. Not the tank, but the bowl to the floor. So I'm going to put them in there, and I'm going to cut them off, and then I'm going to hammer them down as pins. Well, as things never go as planned with me, I went to put the pins in there and hammer them out, and the side busted out. So I had this maple from work. It was from a pallet. So I says, you know what? I'm going to try to figure out how to use this. And I'll use just a wood dowel, match them up, and glue them in. I'm going to glue them in there a little while, but just make sure I get the pins to fit in right and everything. And I'll use some epoxy, and hopefully it doesn't squeeze out the sides here. But it doesn't really matter. So let's get on to the next step, and that's gluing it together. Well, I took it out of the clamps, and this is what I got. So off to sanding. I got a lot of sanding to do. I'll cut these off, then I'll sand it down with I have a bench grinder with a sanding pad on it, and that should take it down pretty quick. Then I'll go with my Dremel. Well, as fate would always hold it, I didn't have a sanding one on there. I had a grinding one. So I had to go to my Dremel and use a spiral cutting bit and just keep notching away at it and everything. And my knife, my utility knife, I kind of got some out of there. So now I'm going to go to sanding with the sanding drum. Well, this is the farthest I got with the 80 grit. So now I'm gonna, it's good enough. So now I'm going to start going through the other grits and finish up the handle, and then start going through the grits for this to polish that too. Well, I finally got finished with it. I went through the orbital sander because I had pits, you know, from the aluminum molding process, I guess, and I didn't like it. It turned out okay, but it's not as good as what I thought it was. But here it is. I like this wood. I had to use this wood because it's all I had. It was a maple, curly maple. Some people call it tiger maple. You can see the little lines in it. It's like iridescent or three-dimensional. And then the blade, you know, it's not perfect, but it's as close as I'm going to get the darn thing. So I can get peanut butter out of the jar, mayonnaise, and, you know, jam or jelly, which one you prefer, but you can get it out of the dang jar now, and I made it long enough to where it'll reach the bottom a lot easier. So anyways, that's it. You can see I sanded it across a lot, you know, but I went through the sandpapers and different grits and stuff, so it'll work for what I need it for. So thanks for watching.